I am not unbiased when it comes to Leica, but this video is not sponsored by Leica. It is, however, sponsored by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. Hey guys, a quick call it public service announcement. We only have a few seats left in our New York, Paris, and Berlin workshops coming up next month. So if you are interested, please hop over to www.3bmep.com/streets24 and snag one before it's too late. By 1914, a young cinema and photography enthusiast named Oscar Barnack, recently hired by Ernst Leitz as a mechanic in their microscope department because they did not make cameras back then, was ready to move from the drawing board and initial prototypes to a working mule of a revolutionary new stills camera. Initially, little more than a metal box used to assess actual light sensitivity for a given reel of film for cinema cameras. The processes just weren't that consistent back then. Barnack had recognized the potential of using perforated film stock for a stills camera by rotating the film transport mechanism 90 degrees, that is from vertical to horizontal, and then, because of this change, able to widen the format from 18 by 24 millimeters to a more comfortable, ergonomically sound, and more enlargeable 24 by 36. This yielded a radically smaller, lighter, and easier to use camera than the 5x7 wooden field model he'd carried, plus tripod, through the Thuringian forest he so enjoyed. I don't know that I pronounced that properly. If I haven't, I'm so sorry. But this was especially important to this young man because of the asthma that made it difficult for him to schlep such a big and unwieldy beast. A primary challenge for Barnack, however, was to find a lens for this small metal box because the cinema lenses of the day could not cover this new, larger, original frame size. He was able to surmount this particular challenge by grafting onto the body a lens made for microscopes that did cover the entire frame. That is the diagonal from a 24 to 36 image perfectly. A 3-element micro Sumar 42mm f4.5. And together, this came to be known as the Ur-Leica, the original, the very first. Hold that thought. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant. And at one level, forgetting most of history, context, so much of what makes anything special, it is as simple as this. Take a Leica Q3, latest version of the Q. Swap out the integrated Summilux 28mm f1.7 that has been attached to every model of Q since 2015 when it was first introduced for a brand new, ambitious as Aposummicron 43mm f2, change the camera covering to a lighter shade of gray, and behold, what you now have is the Q3 43, essentially an autofocusing M11 with the optional VisoFlex 2 attached, the rangefinder optical viewfinder removed, the interchangeable lens mount removed, and put in its stead a single integrated love child of Leica's pinnacle Aposummicron M35 and 50 f2s, which just happens to have all but the identical focal length and field of view of the Ur-Leica's micro Sumar. Out on the streets of New York, or just feet away from my 92-year-old mother who refuses to go quietly into the night, the Q3 knocked my socks off. Passed as prologue, baby. By every functional measure, save for interchangeable lens versatility and the lack of an internal SSD, I think it fair to assert that the Q3 surpasses the M11 with either one of those apo-summicron M's attached at just about 1/3 the price. More precisely stated, the Q3 is 14% lighter, 63% less expensive, weather sealed where the M is not, autofocusing as I've already mentioned where the M is not, macro focusing where the M is not, leaf shutter equipped where the M lenses are not, 8K video recording where the M is not, equipped with a 5.7 million dot EVF where the VisaFlex 2 is not, 3.7, equipped with stabilization via the lens where the M is not, equipped with an articulating rear screen where the M is not. But okay, fine, right. Available only as a fixed lens camera, which doesn't offer the experience of shooting with a real rangefinder coupled optical viewfinder at that. I get it. I own one. Even so, especially as neither my eyes nor my back are those of a 20-year-old, holy wide open for portrait work, the Q3 reminds me of nothing so much actually as the Summilux M50 1.4, wide open, yet the Q3 is clearly sharper. Which is to say, OMG, how did they do that? Stop down even a little bit for street portraiture or urban landscape work, it is absolutely in the same league optically, along with its IP54 rating as my 5200 plus autofocusing apo-summicron SL35 f2 on my Leica SL3, wrapped in a dramatically smaller, lighter, still far less expensive envelope compared to an SL3 kit. As I just said, compared to my SL3 kit. As in, call it 70% smaller, 55% lighter, and 43% less expensive. With the same sensor, processor, battery, EVF. How the did they do that? Okay, it's pretty clear how they did that, but still, amaze. Oh. Now, I did conduct my standard near minimum focus distance testing because although I think the utility of this kind of testing is quite limited, it's not real world, but designers designed for the real world, it is repeatable. I evaluated the apo-summicron against my non-apo 5th generation Leica Summicron M50 mounted on my also 61 megapixel M11, along with Voigtlander's 35 and 50 millimeter apo lanthars, and then added in my apo-summicron SL35 f2 on my yet again 61 megapixel SL3 for good measure. There were no newsflashes here other than what I just said, that the tiny by comparison apo 43 f2 was shockingly close to the Apo SL35. Although, not for nothing. A. Stop down. My $3,000 new, not much less used, 240-gram, non-Apo Summicron M50F2 held its own. If not quite to the same degree of sharpness or chromatic aberration correction compared to any of the other lenses I've tested, nor with anything near the same flare resistance. And B. Voigtlander's 1000-buck, 288-gram Apo Lanthor 50F2 comes closer to Leica Apo image quality than any other M-mount lens not made by Leica I've ever had in hand, making it a steal at the price. But the real kick in the head? Just look at Leica's own MTF charts. This is when I came to fully internalize what Leica has accomplished. Seriously, look closely. Tell a story. To be precise, they prompt me to imagine a story of my own making, that of the mindset behind this accomplishment, which I have decided to call, literally a century after the Ur-Leica was introduced to the market, the Wetzlar Flex, as in, we did it then, we can do it again now, so we did do it now. Create a brilliantly light, compact, enjoyable, optically superb benchmark camera that sets a new standard in this new century, non-interchangeable lens-based. The Q3 43's image quality is indistinguishable from, for 99.9% of us, 99.9% of the time, when viewed at normal viewing sizes and distances. Heck, even when viewed big, up close and personal, Leica's, I'm running out of superlatives here, uber pinnacle, reference standard, as in even better than the 35 and 50 Apo Summicron M's, the dramatically larger and heavier autofocusing 35 and 50 Apo Summicron SLs, while doing so at a fraction of the price. Which, if you're a keep it simple, single wide normal prime kind of guy who embraces the concept of high resolution sensors to extend the long end of a prime, makes the Q3 just about the sweetest sweet spot in Leica's lineup ever. Just maybe the truest functional and spiritual heir to the Ur-Leica of 1914 in Leica's entire history. Yeah. So, let's begin to wrap this up. More than a century ago, when Oskar Barnack showed his Ur-Leica to Ernst Leitz, Leica being a concatenation of lights and camera, the value proposition was straightforward. A small, light, simple to operate, easier to compose, easier to focus, easier to simply advance from one frame to the next, a joy to use, a joy to behold, a joy to have in hand, with image quality that successfully competed against, courtesy of a much smaller negative shot with the highest performance, relatively speaking, lens, now enlarged via a very high performance projector rather than contact printed, the gold standard of the era, large format field cameras. Over time, though, 35mm cameras like that first Leica, what we now in the digital era call full-frame cameras, became bigger, heavier, more complicated, first due to interchangeable lenses, then a switch to single-lens reflex technology, modularity, later to accelerating feature creep, batteries for integrated exposure meters, bigger batteries for motor drives, autofocusing. You get the idea. Mirrorless may have started small. It did start small, with point and shoots. Stayed small, relatively speaking, with the first full-frame mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras introduced in the 2010s. But with the decimation of the point-and-shoot market by the introduction of smartphones, the industry began to rely on these same kinds of techniques for full-frame ILCs to justify the higher margins needed, given that segment's dramatically lower unit sales volumes. Yet, now, here we are. Smartphones have become de rigueur. They've changed everyone's view of how big is acceptably big, how heavy is acceptably heavy, how complicated is acceptably complicated. As in, they're not. And with the technology asymptote, the industry has clearly now reached when it comes most especially to sensors. There is pressure, once again, to differentiate by making cameras and lenses smaller, lighter, faster, less complicated, just all around better, and now less expensive too. Some of us will thus see the Q3 as I do, arguably the most compelling camera in this new vanguard, an incredible image capture device, a talisman, a companion, and for some subset of this group, a bargain. It is, in some ways, a better alternative to a one-lens M11 kit, in some ways, a better alternative to a one-lens SL3 kit, which in either case is high praise indeed. Of course, many more of us won't see any of this, and that's fine. Your mileage may vary, reasonable people may disagree. I'm personally used to being a statistical outlier. It's all good. I get it. I understand. Look, Claudia and I are extraordinarily fortunate to love what we do, shoot with pretty much whatever we want. We love our Leicas for our personal work. For me, Leicas are talismans. We are mesmerized, on the other hand, by the color and resolution of our Hasselblad X2D. We both rely on Sony's, an A7CR for Claudia, an A7R5 for me, when we need the best autofocus, the highest operational speed, and the most flexibility at a reasonable cost in a single mount. And we count on a trio of Panasonic Lumix S5 IIs for our conversations and interviews for the channel, where video reliability and value reign supreme. But it is absolutely not necessary to drop almost 7 large for a small fixed lens travel and street camera to knock your socks off. In fact, some of us may find the very idea of spending that kind of money in that kind of pursuit somewhere between impossible and offensive. I understand this too. I get this too. After all, there are vastly more important things with which to concern ourselves, some of which remain inherently intractable across all of recorded history. Some things, as I'm recording this now in mid-September 2024, taking us either to an inflection point or breaking point, not only in my country, the United States, but across the globe, in a matter of weeks. But back to our little corner of sanity, where we can have far greater control over the outcome and at least be distracted. You could buy a Sony a7CR with Sony's 40mm f2.5, for example, for essentially half the price of the Q3 and get so close from an image quality perspective, especially were you to spend enough time in post, because if you're processing in RAW, the distortion is not great. That even at larger print sizes, the IQ differences would be imperceptible to all but the most demanding among us. And I should add, the A7CR would throw into the mix better autofocus, IBIS, and the versatility of interchangeable lenses. You could spend half of that is half of the Sony kit, for the even smaller and lighter 40 megapixel APS-C Fujifilm fixed lens X100-6 with its integrated full-frame equivalent field of view and shallowest depth of field of a 35, call it f2.8. And you can spend half of that is half of the Fujifilm kit, by picking up a used 16 megapixel Micro Four Thirds Lumix GX85 with a used Leica DG 15mm f1.7, great combo, and still capture amazing images in a tiny package. Or, here's an idea. You could spend time, instead of money, developing your eye and honing your artistic voice using your existing smartphone. Good idea. I think it fair to assert that for those of us with the wherewithal and the inclination, the Q3 is the Q many of us have been waiting for. The most versatile, highest image quality Q ever, made possible by a next-generation integrated lens offering a normal field of view, which better comports with how most of us actually see or feel the world than a 28, a lens sensor combination easily capable of allowing one to crop the crap out of an image to a field of view at least of a full frame 85 or 90, no problem. A camera likely to be acceptable to a wider swath of potential customers as the only camera to carry when you're carrying only one. Smaller, lighter, less obtrusive, a greater joy in hand than anything close to it. From where I sit, taken in toto, this Q3 simply operates on a different plane than any other camera in the market, including every camera we own, every camera I've mentioned. For those of us who can appreciate it, call the Q3 brilliant. Call it a flex. Call it, perhaps, the sweetest sweet spot ever in Leica's lineup, especially for street and travel, which was the Ur-Leica's original raison d'etre, with the first of what is almost certain to become a wider range of smaller, lighter, interchangeable, new reference standard autofocusing lenses that give up nothing to the very best SL glass Leica has produced to date. I'd call this 43 a different kind of inflection point than the one I spoke about just a minute or three ago. And Ur-Leica for the 21st century, already production proven, yet simultaneously a return to the foundational principles of the original. And why? Yeah, you knew this was coming. We've already ordered one. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code HUGH at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace.